Hey everyone, this is MG number 261. This is titled Masculine Geek's Guide to Old School Tech, Navigating the Analog Era. It's a little bit of tongue in cheek, and we're also serious as well because there are certain analog items and pieces of technology that we grew up with that it still has a nostalgic value. Obviously, we understand things move forward and we cannot go backward. So we do use new technology like it is not. Obviously, we're using technology that we're broadcasting on now, so we're not downplaying that, but we are remembering the items we grew up with and the things that the analog technology that made us, if you will. So, welcome, TJ and Robert. How are you guys doing?
I'm doing all right.
Not doing too bad,
Cool.
all things considered.
I know, right? That's a
Yeah.
little caveat there. Cool. Well, glad you guys are here. We're going to keep this brief, under an hour, as we try to do most of these shows now, with the exception of the D&D games. Mictobus, yes, typewriters are fun. That's exactly when they made the backspace eraser electric typewriters. Those were handy. But you're correct. Typewriting is more intentional, and you do have to think. So there's that. TJ has one or two of his own. I'm in the lookout for one of my three. He's got three. I'm in the lookout for one of my own because I do want to write one of my novellas on and write my letters on a typewriter. So I have some things to show, but before I do you guys have anything that you want to show off and talk about?
Sure.
I'm fine with you or TJ taking the lead on this one, and I'll just come in on a little bit later with some stuff. So,
All right, cool.
by all means, whichever one of you want to get started, let's go.
There we go. Is that an Underwood?
I know it's a Royal.
A Royal. Okay, Royal's good.
What year?
I'm guessing 1930. It comes with a suitcase. You
Oh yeah, the travel mobile case. Yeah.
Hmm. Unfortunately, it's not working right now. There's a section where when you press a key, it raises the ink ribbon up so that it hits the key and then it presses the ink against paper. For whatever reason, it's not rising properly. So I've tried lubricating it, thinking that there might be some section that's wrong. I don't know. I'm gonna probably have to get somebody who's an expert on this stuff to work on it.
Yeah, we have a bunch of typewriter shops out here in South Jersey and Philadelphia, actually. It's kind of cool. You wouldn't think, but we do. So
yeah, I'm always curious when there's any of those shops about, because I can remember as a kid, there were all kinds of little mom and pop electronic shops that fixed, old tube televisions and tube radios and things like that.
Oh, yeah. Hey, Bubba.
Of course, they all, as the technology advanced, some of those old guys, they just, they would have almost had to have gone to all the way back to school because they were no more knowledgeable about it. I mean, they knew the basics as far as circuits and electronics and how things work theoretically, but the technology had advanced so much and changed so much that there were just certain things they just, couldn't do. Their knowledge of soldering and things like that just were no longer applicable. So
it's sad that a lot of these, I think this is the problem with the bachelors more so. Married guys I don't give as much of a pass because they got family kin to pass this on to, but I've got a lot of cool stuff. I was having this conversation with a friend of mine. I've got a lot of cool things in my house, collectibles, things that I'm passionate about. What's going to happen to it when I'm gone?
Yeah.
I'm sure the state of Washington, if you die there, will be more than happy to sell it off and
Liquidate
pocket the
that.
money.
Well, the thing is, a lot of this stuff is not necessarily, it's not valuable for selling. It's valuable for people who appreciate it.
Right.
Mm. There's that intrinsic sentimental value to certain things that is only really poignant for the person involved with the actual item or the
Oh, yeah.
family member. Because something that's personal to you is definitely not personal to me. I don't have any emotion attached to it. I
Mhm.
can appreciate it. Oh, TJ's got a really cool typewriter. Okay. Some
Yeah.
people may say, sure. I can appreciate it more because I like those things as well, and I have a fondness for them. But other people would just like, whatever.
The one thing I do have that'll probably be sellable, and I need to get a big case for it all, is my D-Day my collection of D-Day stuff. That
Mhm.
probably would sell because it's got a lot of stuff that you're just, World War II aficionados would love it. So that not it's more of just, it having it handed off to somebody who's going to appreciate it.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
And
Well,
what a
that's
lot
like
of
when
guys-
when people ask me what's the most valuable thing in my collection, I need them to be more specific, because it's like, what item do I have that I could probably get the most value reselling? Or if you're going to destroy everything I own but one thing, what is that one thing you can't destroy? And those are two very, very different things, because the item that's most valuable to me probably has the least amount of value.
Yeah. I'll give an example. This is not old technology wise, but this is on my desk. This is a toy cannon. What you do is you put stuff in here, you close it and fire it, and it would be, from the 70s or whatever.
Yeah, it's actual working cannon.
Yeah, I've had that since I was 4 years old. It's been with me pretty much. I took it with me to college. It's been everywhere I've been. So
did you ever fire it?
I've never fired it. You can buy the stuff online, so I'm probably going to do that.
Cool, McTibus.
Use it for my wargaming.
What brand?
Oh, this?
The fountain pen. McTibus just said no, that's a flex, McTibus. Shut up.
Yeah.
It's an awesome flex. And what kind of, did you get a gold nib? And what kind of ink did you get? I know we're putting you on the spot.
Well, if he dropped that kind of dough on a pen, he should know all the details.
Absolutely. All right, you write us a couple paragraphs and then get back to us. We'll continue. So I was showing Robert this earlier. This is from 1989. It's a automatic voice activated, if I so choose, mini cassette recorder from 1989. Yeah, I used to record my psych classes, so I go back and do notes and stuff back when I was at my county college. Yeah, it still works. I don't have any batteries, but I still have the cassettes of some of the classes. Go back and listen to them when I can. It's very difficult. I didn't understand the concept of an external microphone at the time.
No, yeah.
So I get a lot of ambient room noise, and when you don't use a microphone, which I will demonstrate in a moment, not using a microphone on a larger cassette recorder in a moment, you'll get machine noise picking up from the actual thing itself. Oh, okay. Visconti, huh? Of course you got something with the word homo in it. Homo sapiens dark. Ah, cool. Yes, gold nib. All right. Bias made from lava from Mount Etna. That's awesome. Holy crap. Is that like, that sounds like it's a limited edition. Did you get a limited edition? That's badass. Nice. You already had tons of ink. Okay, that's it. That's with pen collectors, old and new. That's one of their banes, is ink. I know several pen collector, fountain pen collectors that have just cases and shelves full of ink that they'll give out happily as samples if someone asks them. No. All right, so let me. Sorry. Well, here's this. This is a unopened Sony cassette tape that's recordable, and this is local. This was made in, at Park Ridge, New Jersey. I don't know when. This is probably this is going back to the late '90s, early 2000s. Let's open this bad boy up. I'm just gonna do it without cutting myself because I have my glasses on. And this is indeed blank. Not limited, I think. The dark crystal isn't upgraded. Okay. Let's throw the garbage there. Open this up. This is what we used to listen to music on too. I should have gotten out one of my. Maybe I'll take a break in a moment and let you guys talk and grab one of my music cassettes. This is where you take the. In fact, I have a pencil here too. You take the pencil. If for some reason your cassette player started to eat the tape, you'd hear the distortion in the audio, and then the tape would probably either break, and if it didn't, it would shut off. And then you'd have to go back and pull out the extra tape that got caught up in the gears, and not throw out the cassette because it was still okay. You had to do a little bit of maintenance. You had to have a pencil, and you place it in the track, the wheel track, and then go ahead and start. So if you pulled out, let's actually pull out the. Try to do this without. So let's say your tape came out. You're like, oh crap, it's broke. No, it's not broke. You go in here, and you'd go ahead and you'd rewind it and then pull it taut, and then away you go. So you're good. So those were the days. Those are the things that we had to deal with our music tapes and our VHS tapes as well. Those were a little more tricky because you had to lift up the. There's a little like almost like a little drawbridge that covered the magnetic tape that you had to lift up first to get to it and get it out of the way in order to rewind the tape correctly. All right, so I've got this Panasonic. I don't have batteries, so I plugged it in.
I have one of those as well.
These are awesome, aren't they? So let's actually go ahead. Get this in here. Insert it into the tape receptacle. I don't know the official terminology.
Record a NASCAR Geek episode on a cassette tape.
And that's what we're doing, actually. We're just going to go ahead and record real fast and then play it back. Testing. Masculine Geek number 261. Masculine Geeks got. Oh, it must have been the end, so it's probably the other side. So there we go. Oh, no, look. See, it happened. Look, it happened live. So there we go.
Please rewind.
I know, right? So now we have to do some maintenance live. I swear I did not plan this. So now we have to. I want to keep my fingers off of it to not get any kind of fingerprint oil. So that's. I may not be able to. I may have to lay this down. Let's see. Let's go ahead. This is a really old tape. It's it even feels kind of dry. Normally the magnetic tape would be kind of slick in its texture. So I think I may have gotten, let's see. Oh, you dirty. It's like live surgery on this thing. Try not to do this without making any more mess. I think I got it. We're going to find out. We're going to find out. So let's see. All right, let's try to record something. Test. 1, 2, test. Volume's all the way up. Let's start on the other side again. I know this is so fascinating. All right, Masculine Geek number 261, the Masculine Geek's Guide to Old School Tech, Navigating the Analog Era. I heard some static.
It might require a microphone.
There's a microphone on it, an external one, because it's right here next to the record button. All right, well, that's not a problem. I mean, we're not sure if this works or not. So that was but it was nice the fact that it ate the tape, so I got to demonstrate that. So that was kind of cool.
Yeah.
So let's put that aside. In a few moments, I will go get a actual cassette tape. I have a massive collection of cassettes from the late 70s, early 80s, and into the 90s. I know, I should use a Memorex, right?
Well, since we're...
It is a Blackwing. This
That's
is
nice.
a gift, so quiet.
I think I've got a couple of pictures of myself that have been posted online that a lady friend of mine took out at one of the radio stations I worked at. And in the background, while we'd already had, it was late enough in the 90s that we were using CDs as far as
CDs
music.
nuts?
And also had digital audio files on a computer. We still had 2 working record players in the station, as well as a reel-to-reel player,
nice.
3 cart machines, which a cart at a radio station is kind of like, if you can imagine what an old 8-track tape looks like, usually clear. Not always, but depends on where you got your carts. And on the carts would have like promos for the station as far as commercials and stuff. So the things you would do in the real old days, you would have to queue up the song on the record player, which means, you drop the needle down about where it should be, and you have the music potted down so you can hear it in your headphones inside the studio, but you're not broadcasting that over the air. And then you move the record manually back and forth until you get it cued just right to where you want it to be to start it. And you would do that with your records so you could go from one song to the other. So let's say you're coming out of a song, you make sometimes you'll make some kind of comment talking out of the record, go into your commercial breaks, which means you would hit whatever commercials you'd had in the cart machine ready to go. So you're hitting a button on the board, and then you're constantly moving your gauges a little bit to trying to get the best sound possible, and go through your commercials, and then you would come out of the commercial break and hit your song and then talk the record up, and you already had it cued where you wanted, and you it paid to know the songs well enough to know, hey, I've got about 10 seconds I can talk because of the instrumentation at the beginning of this song to say something witty or connected to the music and then into the song. So if you ever get a chance and you're wanting something to do, there are lots and lots of air checks from old DJs on YouTube that you can listen to from various stations, from the big stations out in New York and LA, to smaller stations. So if there was anyone you liked listening to as a kid, you might be able to find some of their air checks online. So it would be outros and intros to songs and occasionally bits and stuff like that. So the radio today now, of course, is all computer. In fact, some DJs aren't even there. It's all computerized, pre-recorded. One DJ, if they even talk at all, does everything for all the stations. Some stations now don't even have jocks. So the whole relationship with radio is completely different than it was in the analog era, especially listening to rock radio in the 60s and 70s, and even into the 80s. You had a lot more of a relationship of sorts with your local DJs at stations you liked listening to.
How long were you a DJ for?
On and off for a couple decades. So
okay.
I mean,
it sounds like a fun job, actually. I've had many jobs. That's not one that I've enjoyed.
I absolutely loved it. I mean, where I worked doing what I did, I never worked in the big leagues that pay anything close to what would be considered well in broadcasting.
Yeah.
And so by the time I worked at the last station I worked at, it had been switched over format-wise, bought up by someone else. Well, the owner's kid kind of took over the station for a while, and then he basically sold it. So now it's one of those automated-only stations that play music and plays commercials, and if you hear anyone's voice, it might be for like a weather and or traffic report, mainly weather, and that's it. There is no jock playing music, and the music's all pretty much the same 40, depending on the format. In this case, this is classic rock format. It's basically the same 40 to 60 songs that every station in that format plays.
Yeah.
So although the term classic rock is now expanding a little bit, so that even some songs from the 90s are starting to creep into what's considered classic rock, whereas before it was all predominantly maybe very, very late 60s in the case of bands like the Stones or the Beatles and then Zeppelin and stuff like that, starting in the 70s and Deep Purple. And then, but that was that solid wheelhouse of rock into, very late 60s into the very early 80s. But yeah, shows would come in on reel to reel. Interviews and stuff would be taped in studio on reel to reel. Occasionally, if you produce songs in studio at your station, you might have those on a cart. So there might be a special Christmas song that the lyrics were changed to be localized. You might have something like that on a cart. And then shows obviously would come in on reel to reel or records. So in my collection of vinyl, I have classic Dr. Demento shows, American Top 40s with Casey Kasem from the 70s and the 80s. And all of that stuff is on vinyl up until Dr. Demento show starting about 1993, I think, is when they started to switch over to CD. So CDs were sent to all the radio stations containing the shows, and then those sometimes, if we were running them on automation, they would be copied over to a digital audio tape or DAT, and then set with the computer to be fired off at a certain time, which usually be like 10 o'clock on a Sunday night. If you were lucky and the station wasn't completely cheap, they actually had a guy there playing the shows. So that was one of the things I did. Excuse me, I should have muted that. But
I do it all the time.
I know, but it's your show, man. Our
show.
Yeah, now. But you're the founder, or one of the founders, so
yeah, true, but just you and TJ are hosts, so but keep going. So,
but no, if you were lucky, you actually worked on the weekend and did those shows. So that's one of the things I did. So it wasn't a lot of heavy lifting. I was there all weekend playing all the weekend shows for long stretches of time, sometimes overnight, sometimes just early in the morning and through the afternoon, sometimes in the morning, home for a while in the afternoon, and then back into the evening, into late evening. So the shifts varied and rotated, but no, it was a lot of fun because I had access to all the different shows, and there's a little bit of alchemy and artistry to how you did things, especially syncing everything together to always hit certain spots at the top and bottom of hours, putting in weather reports when you needed to and stuff like that. So, but I absolutely loved it. I'm glad I got to do it as long as I did and until the time I did. I miss it pretty much every day.
Yeah.
But there are ways and things I could do, which is some of the stuff when I occasionally will do a live show on YouTube. It's me talking or playing music, and then I delete it, especially if I'm playing music, because of the copyright strikes. It's going to get shut down anyway. So, and since I'm not monetized or worried about that, it's just me sharing a song I like that one or two people might hear, and then that's that. So,
yeah. But speaking of that, let me go grab some music cassettes and see if this cassette player will actually work.
Okay.
Keep talking, gentlemen.
All right.
I might as well show something.
By all means.
I bought this last year at an antique shop, hoping it was going to work. I had one like this when I was in college.
Oh, okay.
And I think the clock works or the radio works, but not both.
Gotcha.
So I have one. I bought another one that's in my room. I really don't use it a whole lot because I don't, I still haven't figured out how to set the alarm clock for it. But it's kind of just cool aesthetics. I think this is, let's plug it in and see what happens.
All right.
We're going to. Oh, cool. Perfect.
Looking for an open outlet?
Yep. All right. I think we just answered the question.
Well, radio definitely works. It's playing Tide is High by Blondie.
Yeah. So
Chris wants you to get Bill Murray to sign that, TJ.
Why?
Because it looks like the clock from Groundhog's Day.
Oh, gotcha.
Yeah.
Yeah, so this radio works, just not the clock. So the other one works and the radio works.
Oh, off the political trail, Amos showed up. Radioactive by Imagine Dragons. Good to see you, Amos, even if you don't play. Amos was the legendary Bent the gnome in our Viking D&D game. And I'm drawing a blank on his elf's name in the game with Rollo. You remember it, TJ?
God, there were so many different like NPCs. I could not keep track of them all. And I'm such a visual guy.
There it is. Rothos.
Rothos, yeah.
There you go, Amos. Yeah, we still remember Rothos, who didn't die. He's actually stuck in another dimension at the moment where we can't find him. He's no longer on the prime material plane.
This is
plane, I think. So,
yeah, I'm such a visual guy. So a lot of times, they'd be talking. I'm like, I have no sense of like perception of where I'm at. So I tried to take notes a couple times and it just doesn't work. I have to, if I'm going to do D&D, it's got to be in person.
Well, that's why I'm trying to get the Vegas RageCon thing up and running. We'll see what happens.
Oh, and Amos is actually playing. Are you playing with your political wonks on the campaign trail?
Oh, shit. This is like jammed the fuck in here. This is a cassette single.
Oh, okay.
Depeche Mode.
I still have boxes of cassettes.
I
have boxes of vinyl. Just like I have boxes of anything. I'm sure that's probably hard for the audience to imagine that I have boxes of stuff, but yeah, I do indeed.
My guess is the speaker's blown out on this.
Oh,
no, wait, here we go. It works.
Remember, we got our background music on too.
That's right, bitch.
Just be thankful, audience, that Vince isn't reaching out and touching Faith right here live on YouTube.
That's awesome. I haven't played these since, holy crap, I don't know when. Love it. All right, so now we know the speaker works, and it does actually play cassettes.
Mm-hmm.
What else we got here?
Which, by the way, are making a comeback. There are certain artists who are releasing new music on cassette. And I think last year, Cheap Trick had the #1 album.
Was that Belle Biv DeVoe, you retard? Vic DeVisto's Depeche Mode. So who's doing the cassette?
I think Cheap Trick last year had a #1 selling cassette.
Oh, okay.
And I guess there's still a big market for cassettes and CDs, even in Japan, especially CDs in Japan.
Japan loves anything American that has to do with nostalgia.
Yeah. So, and honestly, I think you should just own physical media of stuff anyway, because it's too easy for this crap to disappear.
Yeah.
Especially at stream. I guess someone was talking about the fact that if you watch Blazing Saddles online on like Netflix or whatever, it has like a 15-minute lecture warning at the beginning of it that this is from a different time and so on and so forth. And I know on television, Nickelodeon and stuff like that always do that for shows like Gunsmoke or have Gun Will Travel or any of that. And I'm glad some of the other local sort of stations, I've not really noticed those on like Me TV or Antenna TV, and certainly not on like Grit TV, which shows a lot of westerns and stuff like that. I've found of an afternoon, if I'm with my son and we're not doing like something school related, as far as if the television's on in the background, we're watching Gunsmoke or Bonanza or something like that, because I'm not going to put on some Nickelodeon kid show for him, because a lot of it is just crap.
Yeah, you don't know what you're going to get.
Yeah. So, and I would much rather him grow up with the values of Paladin from Have Gun Will Travel than the Loud House or some something. So
Yeah, I think that's where I've just been collecting stuff for years, and as far as DVDs and stuff like that. And I probably need to get a better DVD shelf for my upstairs. But if long term I end up staying where I'm at, that's always a possibility, and it's a contingency I'm planning for. I'm just going to turn the downstairs into an archive of DVDs, CDs,
Cassettes, albums.
just
Yeah,
as much stuff as possible. And
absolutely.
you know,
I concur.
worst case scenario is you turn the downstairs basement into a store, which is what one guy I knew did. He just collected stuff, and then when he got older, he didn't want to have that stuff anymore, so he just started selling it, and people would just show up.
Mm-hmm.
They pay in cash or whatever, but he just marketed himself as a business guy.
Yeah.
Yeah. Speaking of which, over there is my box TV with the DVD player inside of it. So my Nintendo 64 hooked up, and my NES, and
yeah. No, but make the business right. They can't go back and edit a physical book. I mean, well, there's a caveat to that. Print on demand is still susceptible.
Yeah. And later editions of things, because that's what they've done.
Correct.
What they're done or are doing to like the newer editions of old James Bond novels. So you if you're going to buy them, you got to buy them secondhand, and that's getting harder and harder to do because there are still used mom and pop bookshops, but in a lot of places, those have all been driven out of business by like the half price books and stuff like that, which, early on were comparable to the mom and pop shops, but now that they've driven them all out of business and are the only game in town, they're not much different.
Fortunately, I don't have to deal with that here. South Jersey is full of really good secondhand bookshops. I'm very fortunate.
Yeah, you got to hunt.
You're right.
But,
yeah, you do. If you forge a good relationship with one bookshop, especially if they do a brisk online business, that helps save them too.
Yeah.
If they curate the books well, and they have an online business, and they're willing to find a book for you, that will save them. And you also have a great relationship with someone that works at the bookshop that can find you things when you need it. So.
What I find interesting, and I'm dealing with this old tech, and this is probably more applicable to Vince and I, but by virtue of being born in the latter half of the 20th century, in the 1960s, I feel like we were exposed to so much history before us from either older generations of people and things that were still around, even some things from like the late 1800s, but certainly stuff from the early 1900s. And of course, Vince being in the Northeast, there's stuff from the 1700s. So,
well, most of our grade school field trips were to, New Jersey was huge into dairy farms. I think at one point in time there was around 200 dairy farms in South Jersey alone.
Okay.
There's maybe 3 now, but there was a few, I can't remember their names, but there's a few, relatively famous ones that we would go to and learn the history of farming, learn the history of the area. We would go to historic sites as part of field trips, museums and such. And that's probably where I got my love of local history, from those kind of trips, and the Boy Scouts, Cub Scouts and Boy Scouts. But there's a lot of rich history, obviously, here on the East Coast. And you're correct. We were steeped in that stuff.
Right.
I mean, that was it goes back to the old storytelling days too. It's like that's how you had your entertainment, it was through stories.
Right.
Not that we didn't have TV, but that's, for the most part, even before cable, you just had basic, 6 channels?
Yeah, but
you still talked and played games, and you went places, and there was people to talk to. I remember in sixth grade, my sixth grade teacher was very civic minded. So we learned civics, and she was also very community minded. So every Friday, we would walk to one of the local nursing homes and do activities and talk to the inmates. Really, we would talk to the older folks. And we'd hear all these great stories. So we had that was I love that Mrs. Eaton. I love that teacher. That's my sixth grade teacher.
Yeah. Do you guys know what a Davenport is?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah. All Davenports are couches, but not all couches are Davenports. That's like an old saying. And my great grandmother had a Davenport and referred to it as the Davenport, and they still called the refrigerator icebox.
Ice boxes. Yeah, my grandmother called it the ice box too. Yeah.
So most of my life, I've referred to it as an ice box, which apparently really threw off a couple of my sons because I tell them to throw something in the ice box and put it in the freezer. And I'm like, why did you put this in the freezer? I told you to put it in the ice box. And they're like, but that's where the ice is. And I'm like, I guess there's a certain logic there.
They're not wrong.
But my great uncle had pasture land and horses and did harness racing. So, and one of the saddles he had was probably from at least about 1914, possibly even earlier than that, a U.S. cavalry saddle.
Nice.
So and he was born in 1900. So I got exposed to stuff from, that era. So even though I was born in the late 20th century, I was exposed to stuff from the, latter 19th century and early 20th century. And as all of us know, that period of time saw huge, dramatic, revolutionary changes.
Yeah.
And I think of, so there were things I knew in my 20s and 30s that I don't know if most people in their 20s and 30s now have anywhere close to that kind of experience, because the changes, while there have been some dramatic technological changes and stuff like that, it's not as lit by candlelight and fire and going to space. Dramatic leap in changes from the time of like Vince and I's existence on this planet to comparable generations that have come after us.
What I find really fascinating, not fascinating, but just it's an honest question, is why there's just a total lack of interest in any way, shape, or form by most young people about the past. Because I was always interested. Most of us were pretty interested in stuff, but I think part of it was part of, Davy Crockett, King of the Wild Frontier, or you're watching some historical cool show like Gunsmoke or something like that was a kid's show, like all these period pieces of stuff. Do kids? I don't think anything that they watch has history, any kind of history.
Well, here's the deal. You kind of hit the nail on the head, TJ, and I'll take it further. So all those action-oriented cartoons, movies, even plays and books, what did they have in common? They had men being heroic in some fashion. Yeah, they had flaws, whatever, but they were the classic hero. They were men of action. They fired a young man's imagination. You may say, well, what did the women get out of it? What did the young girls get out of it? Well, those were the men that they wanted. So it appealed to everybody.
Yeah.
There's the shit that's coming out today has none of that. It's not appealing to anybody. And the numbers and the monetary gains are bearing that out.
Mm-hmm.
There's no action. There's no great story.
Yeah.
The dialogue is tepid and warm, and in some cases downright insultingly juvenile.
Yeah.
There's nothing for young men to grab onto. There's nothing for women to go, that's what I want in a man. They don't see that. So it's devoid of any, the current media is devoid of any of that. That's the problem that we're having, at least from my vantage point.
Well, and also there is so much stuff, a lot of it admittedly crap, but there is so much stuff that even being intellectually honest and looking at stuff, it's, unless you know what you like and have a discerning taste for, no, I'm not going to waste my time with this. I'm going to watch something I know I will like. Just trying to pick what you're going to watch is different. Whereas when Vince and I were growing up, well, you know, I know for a lot of kids, my generation, especially if you lived in a house that only had one television set, you watched what your dad watched, or you didn't watch TV at all.
Yeah, there weren't what you would call unlimited options.
Right. But even let's say you're at grandma's house and grandma doesn't care, other than she would like to watch Lawrence Welk Saturday night at about 6 o'clock.
I remember Lawrence Welk.
For if grandma can watch that, then you can watch whatever else you want to watch. Sometimes of an afternoon or an evening, if you're going to watch television, your choice is watching, a talk show or a game show, or some old movie from the 1930s or 40s. So if there was like nothing on, you might default watch this show from the 1930s or 40s. So you would accidentally get exposed to Clark Gable or Humphrey Bogart or James Cagney or Edward G. Robinson, or maybe even there might be a silent movie on, and you get exposed to like comedians like Charlie Chase, Charlie Chaplin, Buster Keaton,
yeah.
Something like that. So here you would end up seeing and being exposed to stuff from the 1920s. I remember going to school and talking to someone about these Charlie Chase movies I had seen, and they're like, "Are you sure you don't mean Charlie Chaplin?" And I'm like, "No, Charlie Chase." And he was a comedian, and there was physical comedy to it and stuff like that, and it was silent, and it was his own thing. And of course, it wasn't until later that I could, get access to a book and actually look this guy up and learn anything about him. But so by virtue of the fact that your options for media were limited, anywhere from 3 to 6 stations, depending on how big of a city you lived in, the TV only ran from maybe 6 o'clock in the morning till
maybe
a little
2.
after midnight during the week, and like 1 or 2, 1 or 2 in the morning on weekends. So the opportunity to get exposed to stuff deeper and older than yourself was a lot more prevalent than it is now, with however many channels you have on cable, plus whatever streaming services you have. And that's the thing that I find maddening, is there are people who have cable and like all the different streaming services. And it's like,
which is basically cable.
Yeah, and it's like,
twice.
What the hell do you watch? And they binge stuff on Netflix and everything. And I mean, that's all fine and good, but it seems like it's hard to focus on anything or to really enjoy anything other than just consume whatever the new thing is. And I just, that's not me. I would much rather put on Pale Rider or Once Upon a Time in the West than
310 to Yuma.
Yeah. Or like I said, if I'm watching TV and I have it on with my son, especially during the day, it's old Westerns. And I would much rather have him exposed to old Westerns, because I think he will get more out of it value-wise. I mean, I know some of our friends in the Let It Burn crowd could, might poo-poo that idea of getting values of, why on earth would I want to limit him like that by giving him any morals or values? But it's, I want to give him as much armor and as much know-how and as much ability to fight as possible, because I won't always be here to have his back. So
the only problem I have with the anti-moral crowd is I understand that they don't want other people telling them what to do, especially online. I get that.
Oh, I do too.
Yeah, but I don't necessarily subscribe to the I'm gonna do what I want. Kind of like, fuck you all. I'm gonna do what I want, and come what may.
Right.
I'm not that guy either. I mean, I do have my own personal code that I live by that's in some ways for myself highly moral.
Yeah.
And my own ethical code. I think every man needs a philosophy to live by. I've mentioned that before. I won't go into depth again, but I've never understood anyone who would not want to teach their children a good foundation of right and wrong and a bit of do unto others.
Yeah. In my experience, if you don't teach your kids, and this is as someone who actually has kids, my experience is if you don't teach your kids right or wrong, good and bad, whatever, someone else will.
Exactly.
Someone else.
And chances are it's going to be the state.
Yeah. Or people that you wouldn't want around your kids. So it's,
Yeah, it's I think that, and the nice thing is your kid's going to know that this stuff existed. There's probably going to be a lot of kids who just never know that this stuff was ever there. And I just wrote an article for Old Glory Club called Battlefield Aesthetica, where I was talking about this in terms of aesthetics, where there's this idea now that things have never been different. And if you dress well and you dress not like cosplay, but you're dressing well, you're showing that things used to be different and they were better. And that's one way to do it. But then by also showing your kid these shows, they're going to be shielded from influence by people who say, oh, this is the way we've always done it and there's no other way. I think what they really try and convey is there's no other way. This is the only way to do it. And anything that came before was worse off.
Right.
And that's honestly one of the biggest problems that they're going to have is that, I mean, this is why I'm increasingly convinced that they're going to just start banning stuff rather than giving lectures in advance, is because they can sit there and say all they want, but if people are still laughing at Blazing Saddles, it's defeated the purpose.
Yeah.
If they're laughing just as hard now as they were back when it first came out, they failed. It's like Starship Troopers, the movie. There was a debate online about whether, what kind of film was like. What the director or filmmaker intended is not as relevant as how it's interpreted in mass by viewers. There's not entirely related, but it reminds me of when the Soviet Union put the Grapes of Wrath film in movie theaters and was allowing Soviet citizens to actually watch an American film. And Grapes of Wrath is about all these poor Oklahoma farmers who go and migrate all the way to California. And the Soviet Union wanted that film to be, oh, well, look at how poor these Americans are, which was kind of the point of the film in America. Well, they all walked out of the theater and thought, wow, these Americans are so rich. Even the poor have cars.
Yeah. And more importantly, they can go from here to there
without papers.
Yes. So
papers.
So I think that that's where they're gonna run into trouble with all this stuff. One quick thing, since we're still on the gadget stuff, here is a floppy disk.
Yeah, there you go. I got many of those.
You can actually
I still have one of the drives.
Yeah, you can still buy floppy disk drives that connect to a USB. I actually want to buy one just to see. I've had these since childhood. I have no idea what's on them.
Get one.
Yeah.
See what's on it.
I need to do that because I know I've got some old Japanese music and stuff on some floppy disks that I have not been able to find on any readily available album or CD releases in Japan.
Yeah, you do.
So, So are those C cup floppies?
Yeah, 5.25 inch,
Yeah.
5.25 inch. Ah.
But TJ, tying in with what you were saying, that what's funny about the Starship Troopers kerfluffle on Twitter is that's what, like a week or two after the Rorschach Watchmen kerfluffle. That was basically the same thing. It's like
I'm glad I don't know
Alan Moore.
I'm glad I don't know what you guys are talking about.
Alan Moore was showing what a fascist and crazy man Rorschach was. How dare you fanboys like him and think he's the good guy because he kills Prados and rapist and all that kind of stuff. You guys are reading Watchmen wrong. And it's like it was the exact same argument but for a different media. And the thing is with Starship Troopers, the intention of the movie and the intention of the author of Starship Troopers, Robert Heinlein, and Verhoeven, as far as the movie version, the two men had two very different things they were trying to do with the book and with the movie. And you can argue whether either of them succeeded. Certainly, I think in Verhoeven's case, he set out to do one thing and kind of ended up with an unintended result. And
somebody argued speculated that he actually intended to make the film exactly as it was interpreted. The problem is, from what we understand, he didn't even finish the book.
Right.
He didn't even read it. He didn't even like it. He just read one part of it and then he was like, yeah, I don't like this. I want to bash this book. I don't know. I just remember watching the documentary on it, and the problem is the characters are all likable.
Yes.
It's so over the top that it's not like satire has to have a level of darkness to it, or like there's difference between parody and satire. Satire is when you're making fun of something in a specific way, and it can be very, very harsh, but parody is where you're just poking fun at it in good fun, which is almost what Starship Troopers was, because it's so over the top. And I was pointing out on Twitter, somebody was talking about it, and they were saying that the one scene where he's at the military recruiter's office, and the guy's saying, "Oh, the infantry is what turned me into the man I am today," and he's got no legs. I said, "Well, great. How does Johnny Rico end the film? He doesn't end the film crippled." Like something out of All Quiet on the Western Front, where he's like handing papers to a new recruit. He's off leading his troops the same way that the old teacher did.
Right.
So no, which would have, if they'd done that, it would have absolutely killed the vibe of the film, because the film isn't a dark film.
Right.
So,
well, and the fact that oh yes, film.
35 millimeter. I have no idea what's on this. This is back from the late 80s, early 90s.
Early flogging pictures, perhaps?
May very well be, now that I'm thinking about it. I have to develop this shit myself.
Yeah. Well, geez. I mean, now kids, to if you want to be on your school newspaper as a staff photographer or something like that, it's like you're fine with your phone almost. Whereas back in the day, not only did you know how to have to use a camera and know how to operate the camera, you also had to learn how to develop your own film.
Yep.
In a dark room.
Another
at least black
skill.
and whites. Yeah. So yeah, I don't begrudge all the technological changes. I just, unfortunately, technology always changes faster than we do.
That's why I gave up.
Well, I like the fact that I'm sure Robert, and even to some extent you too, TJ, that we grew up in the time that we did.
Or I would not have wanted to have been born later.
No.
Just for my appreciation of music.
You actually raised an interesting point that I raised in I started podcasting again on my website. I just did it, and I was raising a question because a lot of people want to argue about, things have always been this way, and have never changed. It's the same thing. I'm saying, really, would you like to be growing up at this era?
Mm-hmm.
Would you prefer this over when you were growing? That is the litmus test. Would you prefer that? Would I have preferred to grow up in the 80s? That's a debatable. I'm willing to contemplate that. Did I like growing up in the 90s? Yes. Would I want to grow up now? No. Like, absolutely not. Now, would I want to grow up in some other era well beyond before I was born? I can't really fully answer that question because it's contextual. But yeah, if you're not immediately saying hell yes, I'd love to have been born now or grow up now as a teenager, nobody's saying that. No one will say, I wish I had been a teenager in 2024.
Yeah.
Nobody will look back and say, I wish I'd been a teenager in this era. They just won't say it because, people say, well, you're not going to die of polio. No, you might die from something else that's completely manufactured by man. Congratulations. Or, well, they didn't have a polio vaccine. Well, great. We now have fake vaccines. Like,
yeah.
It's all relative. No,
Yeah.
I was a young lad in the 70s.
Mm-hmm.
Those were my formative years, and Robert knows that as well.
Yeah.
He lived it too. I mean, all that we knew when we were kids then was playing outside.
Oh yeah.
That was it.
Oh my God.
So,
and being and hanging out with girls. Misadventures with girls in their parents' house when mom and dad were away.
Exactly.
And you could literally do stuff like that. You could literally hang out at a girl's house listening to records and experimenting with stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Stuff. Yeah. So I absolutely would not have wanted to have been born any later than I was. I might have been willing to have been born earlier to have experienced more of the 60s, but and to have been a little bit older in the 70s so that I could have maybe have done
cars.
even more things and had access to even more cars. Yeah. But I would not have been I would not have wanted to have been a teen even in the 90s. And I had acquaintances with high school kids in the 90s because I was in my in my 20s. So I would run into high school kids at conventions and stuff like that, and even gamed with a few of them. And they were all right and they were fun and whatever, but the exposure I had to music and things like that, I just cannot stress enough how important and intrinsic to who I am as a person is to my connection to music. And what's interesting, and I just found this out recently, I'll be going somewhere with my son, and of course he listens to my music. He's been giving his mom list of the songs that he wants put and added to his Spotify list. And some of it is newer music. So like Swedish Pagans by Sabaton, which is heavy metal. But he's also asking her for, songs from the 80s, like, various songs from Survivor, beyond Eye of the Tiger, because Dad actually has all of the Survivor albums and listens to deeper cuts. And then today, I guess today or yesterday, he was giving his mom a list of songs by the British glam rock band The Sweet, who did Ballroom Blitz, Fox on the Run, Love Is Like Oxygen, Hellraiser, and some others. And he's like giving her a song. So these are songs from the early to mid 1970s. He's asking his mom for
That's awesome.
So, but Vince has some more tech.
Yeah. This was when singular wireless was still a thing. This is a Motorola Razr. I think it's a second generation, maybe a second generation. And yes, it does work. I still have the power cord. I still have my old Qualcomm. That's how far back that goes.
I sometimes think about going back to an older flip phone, but I also think, well, I've got this quote unquote smartphone, but I don't have to be attached to it at all times, or I can turn it off.
That's
and
awesome.
yeah,
There you go. Yeah, that's it. Is that a Verizon or AT&T?
LG.
It's an LG. I still have
LG.
the last LG model that they came out with before they. In fact, it's right here. This is the last LG.
Mm.
Oh,
So,
okay.
yeah, I've always liked LG, but we're I've thought too about going back to a flip phone, and I would have to be just so disciplined and so structured. It would limit a lot of stuff in my life to the point where I just thought, you know what, it's kind of like the internet. You may not have to like it, but it is here, and you have
Well,
to.
you got so many pieces of two-factor authentication that it's easier to
Oh
do
yeah,
with a text or entering a code from your phone, or going to the Duo mobile app and pressing accept.
Mm-hmm.
yeah. Oh, that's another. I didn't even think about that, but yeah, that's probably was the final nail in the coffin. Was where I was like, yeah, I can't.
You can't do anything without it.
You can't, and
We're
that's just
shackled.
that's just reality. You know what you could do is what you could do actually is you yeah, it's difficult.
I mean, you could. There are still second-factor authentications where you can do a phone call.
Mm-hmm.
So you could push it out to a phone call rather than
Yeah.
the
When I retire, my goal is to just have a landline, and I'll just be telling people, hey, you want to meet up with me at this place, be there, but I don't have a phone. So if you cancel on me, you're dead to me.
Mhm.
yeah, right. You're dead to me, see?
You're dead to me. See, yeah,
Yeah.
you couldn't flake on people. So
No, exactly. Yeah, that's true. Until the advent of the answering machine, what did Seinfeld call an answering machine? A relationship resuscitator.
Yeah.
Yep. All right, gentlemen. We're coming up. Well, we're all past the 1 hour mark. Is there anything else regarding old school tech you would like to very quickly mention?
Well, I'm sorry I didn't bring my cameras because some of them are so old that they were early Instamatic cameras. Some of them were so old that I don't know if they were still making film for one of my cameras, which was an old camera that opened up and you had to pull the front out and it had bellows on it.
Oh, yeah.
And you had to be very careful with how you
Dry
took the
rot that stuff.
picture. Yeah. And, they were still actually making film for that camera as of about 1987 to 89, but I have no idea if they would now. I know that there are some camera aficionados and artists who use those older style cameras, have them refurbished and custom parts made for them and custom film manufactured for them to use to take photographs, specifically trying to get a certain look from film that you just absolutely cannot get with digital photography, despite all the different filters you can select to use to make your image appear black and white and grainy and whatever else you want to do. Sorry I couldn't bring those on.
Next
Meant
time.
to, but had some stuff happen Sunday evening after work that just kind of screwed up my week. So, but I was going to bring that for show and tell, and I unfortunately did not get to. So
we'll
glad I
do
got to
another
talk
one.
a little bit about working at the radio station.
Yeah, we'll do another one of these again.
Yeah.
Cool. All right, gentlemen. It's a pleasure as always to talk to you once again every week. And make sure you hang out after I end the broadcast so we can discuss what we need to discuss. And everyone watching now, thank you. Everyone in the chat, always a pleasure. Mictibus, good to what? We are officially old. I'm fine with that. I have no problem being old or older. Good old days. Get off my internet lawn. And Amos, good to see you. It's been a while. Chris, you as well. And I believe that's it for the chat. So there we go. Anyone watching later, we appreciate your viewership and your subscriber status. So thank you for that. And in the meantime, TJ, you know what to do. Take us out.
All right, guys, keep the fires burning. Keep the wine flowing. Keep the lead chewing down range. Keep the fires burning. Did I already say that?
No, keep going.
Okay. There's a lot. Don't take any.
There is a lot.
Don't drink all the rum. Don't be Aaron Clary. Don't be gay. So don't be Aaron Clary.
Welcome to Masculine Geek, where men gather to discuss life, love, and all things geek. And unlike most YouTube channels, we don't beg for super chats. We don't play cutesy little sound bites. That crap is lame and feminine. We're men swapping notes and gathering together for men talk. Get on board or get lost. Either way, it doesn't